Modules are essentially the bread and butter of Canvas. Um, it's where you're able to organize all of your course content in a way that provides a linear progression for your students to navigate through your course. The importance of this cannot be overstated. So we're going to go into modules. I'm going to click on modules, and it's going to bring us a very basic interface. We have two buttons, essentially, view process and add module. If you're unfamiliar with the idea of a module, you could think of a module like you think of the chapter of a book. If your course design lends itself to using modules, which all, if not most, of online courses really should, uh, it's going to be broken down into a logical progression through your course. And this is nothing new. Even when we had Blackboard, there were a number of instructors that did use the idea of modules, but they had a content area set up for each week of class. You could think of a module as a week, just as the same you can think of it as a unit or a chapter or a section. It doesn't really matter what the terminology is, as long as you're able to chunk your course together in a way that's meaningful for your students and helps them to know what exactly your expectation is of them from one point in the class to the next. So I'm just going to add a module. I'd call this week 1. Add another module, call it week 2, so on and so forth. You kind of get the idea. When you take this approach of module creation in your course, you can kind of liken it to scaffolding a building before construction. Really what we're doing is we're laying a foundation that we're later going to go in and flesh out and fill in with all sorts of content. You'll notice here there are some other options in the Add Module window. I can lock it until a certain date, so I can tell Canvas that I don't want students to see this module until a date that I specify. There are also prerequisite options here. We're going to get into that when we start talking about course design. When you do add a module with a time unlock restriction, that will show you that restriction down here at the bottom. Now modules, when they're created, are created unpublished, so Canvas assumes that you don't want anybody to see that module until you tell it to. So to publish a module, you just click on the item there. Now I have published my week 6 module that will not unlock until December 1st. So even though I have published it, students still cannot see it because it's not December 1st yet. If I left this unpublished, students still would not be able to see it even after the 1st of December because I have not published it. So always make sure everything is published that you intend for Canvas to reveal on its own. Each individual module has its own separate options button, so I can click on the options for week 1. I can edit it by renaming it if I want to rename it something different, like chapter 1 for instance, or I can also use the edit feature to come back and add prerequisites later. I can also move the module to a different location. Say I want to move it after week 2, which can also be accomplished simply by dragging and dropping the area here, and then you can just drag and drop it. The next option here is to delete, which would get rid of that module. The last option here is share to commons, which we're not going to go over in this particular course. To add an item to a module, you click on the addition sign, and here you're going to have the option to choose from any content you've created in Canvas already, or to create a new blank document that will be added to that module. I'm going to create a new page called Week 1 Overview and add that item to the Week 1 module. Let's add a few more items just to fill this out a little bit. From the drop-down list, I'm going to choose Discussions, and I'm going to choose my Week 1 Introductions discussion that I've already created. I'll add another discussion. And perhaps I also want to add a quiz for week 1. I don't have any quizzes already created, so I'm going to do a new quiz. I'll choose that option. I'm going to call this week 1 quiz, and I'll add that item. Now when I create items from the module interface like I did with the week 1 overview page and with the week 1 quiz page, these are simply placeholders that Canvas expects that I'm going to have to go into later in order to flesh out. So to do that in the modules area, you'd simply click on that page and then click on the edit button, and I'm able to then add the content of my overview page. One effective way to think of modules is that it is a collection of shortcuts. It is a place where you can aggregate all of your course materials. Anything that a student needs to do or read or see, whether we're talking about discussions or quizzes or files or links to websites or pages, everything here can be linked in a way that fits into this modular course design. Accessing this week one overview page is essentially the same thing as going into the Pages tool of your course, clicking on View All Pages, and clicking on Week 1 Overview. You can see why it's more important to use modules because it's a much more fluid process. Last thing we're going to look at in this quick guide is the linear progression that students are able to take in modules. So if I click on Week 1 Overview, from a student perspective, once they have read the overview, they have a next button that they can click on, which will automatically take them to the next item in that module. When they get done with that one, they can click next again. It will take them to the next item in that module, so on and so forth. Step-by-step process that students absolutely love.